Hello, and welcome to Runkle of the Bailey. My name is Ian Runkle. I'm a Canadian criminal defense and firearms lawyer. Today I want to talk about a story that was sent to me by Jevidar on the InRange TV Discord, and it goes like this. Two guys have a YouTube channel, and they decide they want more eyeballs. You know, more views, more likes, more subscribers, and I get it. I'm running a channel. I'd like all of those things too. But what they decide to do is they decide to pull a prank, and that prank consists of getting a couple of butcher knives and approaching somebody on the street as though they plan to rob this person. Now, that person is not in on it. They're not part of the joke. So they don't know what's going on here. Now, I'm sure the plan was, assuming that all of the facts have been correctly reported by the media, which is not always the case, but it seems like the plan was to go, make this guy think he's being robbed and then be, oh, hey, it's just a prank, bro. Isn't that funny? You thought you were going to get killed. You peed yourself. Isn't that hilarious? Well, this guy didn't pee himself. He had a concealed firearm and he shot and killed one of the pranksters. So this raises the point that this is a very bad idea. Don't go and menace people with weapons, even if it'll get you YouTube likes. It's just not a great plan. However, this also raises some legal questions, and I'm going to approach these from the perspective of what if this happened in Canada? If I recall correctly, this story happened in Tennessee, but being a Canadian lawyer, let's look at the sort of Canadian hypothetical. So the first thing people ask is there a defense in law to this whole notion of, it's a prank, bro? And the answer to that is complicated, because sometimes that may actually be a partial defense. Let's have a look at the charge of robbery here. Definition of robbery has everyone commits robbery who A, steals and for the purpose of extorting whatever is stolen, or to prevent or overcome resistance to the stealing, uses violence or threats of violence to a person or property. B, steals from any person and, at the time he steals or immediately before or immediately thereafter, wounds, beats, strikes, or uses any personal violence to that person. C, assaults any person with intent to steal from him. Or D, steals from any person while armed with an offensive weapon or imitation thereof. So let's make a big assumption here, which is the big assumption is that they're not actually going to take anything from the person. If the guy pulls out his wallet and offers it over, they're not going to touch that wallet. They don't want it. So with that assumption in mind, they probably couldn't get a conviction on the robbery. Now, that changes dramatically if they start actually taking things from the guy, even if they plan to give them back, because even that temporary deprivation could very well make out the robbery. Now, so the whole it's a prank aspect of it might provide a defense to the robbery charge. And that is a big deal because robbery comes with some very serious penalties. However, this whole it's a prank bro thing is not going to entirely sort of absolve these people from liability, because the intent of all of this is to commit an assault with a weapon. They're approaching somebody with a knife in a fashion that is intended to make that person think that they're about to get stabbed. That's enough to make out an assault with a weapon, most likely. This would also certainly be possession of a weapon for purposes dangerous to the public peace, because you're talking about somebody who has a weapon. If you're thinking that you want to scare somebody with your butcher knife, that's enough to make it a weapon. And this whole purpose of, it's a prank, bro, we're just going to make this guy terrified because he thinks he's being robbed, would certainly, in my view, be something that the court would take as a purpose dangerous to the public peace. So the it's a prank, bro might actually get them away from the most serious charge, but it wouldn't get them away from every charge at all. Now, my understanding is that at this point, nobody's been charged in relation to this. Neither the people who were involved in the making of the video, nor the guy who shot somebody. So I suspect that that's because this is going to be a situation where the police want to do some investigation. Again, these are the facts as reported by the news, but I can't say whether they're actually what happened. We don't really know that at this stage. These are all sort of allegations made in the media here. What about the other guy, though? The guy who has the firearm and engages in the shooting. Now, in Canada, he wouldn't be able to have that gun. So, we're probably talking about somebody who would be charged with, possession of the firearm without a license, possession of firearm in unauthorized place, all sorts of charges relating to that. But even, if you assume that this was an illegally possessed firearm, he'd likely have a good self-defense case here. Now, I can't say it's a perfect case. Self-defense is incredibly fact-specific, so there's a whole lot of facts here that we don't know. How far away were these people? What were the avenues for escape? Is this a situation where the person could leave rather than confront them? What were the relative sizes? All of these sorts of questions. So I can't say that he'd be acquitted, but certainly self-defense would be on the table. The Crown would have to negate self-defense when you're talking about somebody who is approached by two people who were wielding knives. And let's also consider the situation of somebody who is not carrying a knife, but somebody who might be just a camera person. That person is actually potentially also on the hook as a party to the whole operation of possession of weapon for purposes dangerous to the public peace and assault with a weapon. They all sort of got together and made this plan. They're all together in on it, and they can all end up in trouble. So again, not just the whole you might get shot thing, but there's all sorts of reasons why participating in something like this is a bad idea. Even if you're not the person holding the knife, you can still end up on the hook for it. So again, everything about this story is this is a bad idea. Now, just in terms of sort of political philosophy here, there's plenty of people who would say, well, this is a real tragedy, and it's a good thing that in Canada, everybody would have walked away alive from this situation. Well, yes and no. I mean, it's not a great situation if you've got people able to menace people and cause them fear for their life. But most situations where people are approached with knives are not situations where, it's a prank. That would be a highly unusual thing. It's not a reasonable conclusion to leap to if somebody is approaching you with a knife. So, at any rate, I don't know that it's a good thing if people can't defend themselves, because in most situations, somebody would be being robbed, or worse. People say, oh, if you just cooperate, you'll be fine. But that's not always the case. Sometimes people are robbed and still get stabbed, notwithstanding the fact that they're cooperating. And sometimes the people who are approaching you with a weapon, they might not intend just to take your stuff. They might have mistaken you for somebody else and somebody who they want to do violence to. Or they might not have mistaken you and still just want to hurt you. Or they may have other desires to hurt you in ways that are not robbery. You can't always just give someone your wallet and say that's going to be enough. So I'm not a big fan of this idea of helplessness. Now, I should start by saying I think it's tragic whenever somebody is killed, including in self-defense situations. These two might be idiots, but that doesn't mean it's a good thing that they're dead. The other thing is that it's going to have a tremendous impact on the guy with the gun here. Notwithstanding, even if he's cleared that they find this as a proper self-defense shooting, even if they never charge him, so it never ends up costing him any money, he never has to pay a lawyer, I expect that there's likely going to be a tremendous psychological toll. People online tend to say, oh, I could just shoot a guy in self-defense and it wouldn't be any big deal. I'm John Q. Badass, no problems. It's not typically how it tends to work. There's a lot of psychological damage that causes. A lot of people walk away from that sort of thing with PTSD or other trauma relating to that. So I don't view this as, yay, this is a great outcome. However, I do tend to think that as a society, it is less of an issue when you have somebody who is sort of deliberately and intentionally engaged in activities that really put themselves at risk. If you talk about somebody who's breaking into houses while armed with a weapon and, they face self-defense from the homeowners, I tend to say, well, yes, that's an occupational hazard when you engage in that activity. I don't see that it's of top priority societally necessarily to ensure that it's 100% safe to rob people or to break into people's houses or worse. So I've had people confront me with this notion of, wouldn't it be better if nobody had any guns and then these two would be alive? But again, that assumes that, we're talking about only scenarios like this where these two don't intend any harm. And this is logic that we don't really apply in any other scenario. If we imagine that these two were playing a prank instead, where they were rushing out into traffic and filming people's horrified expressions as they slam on the brakes and try not to run into these guys, and somebody maybe wasn't paying attention, didn't hit the brakes fast enough, maybe their brakes weren't good enough, and splat. We wouldn't say, oh, well, wouldn't it be better if there were no cars? Because, then we'd say, these guys shouldn't have been doing this stupid thing that they were doing. So that's kind of my my thoughts on this. Anyway, thank you for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe so that I don't have to go running around chasing people with knives. I also want to thank my Patreon supporters at the $50 level: Demo, Sir Daniel Wicks of Alberta, Canada's National Firearms Association, North Central Process Service, and Kyle Martin. At the $20 level, Cameron Johnson, Dale Nesbitt, and Andrew Elsich, as well as a number of you at the $10 level who will be in the crawl immediately following. Thank you once again, and I hope this has armed you with knowledge.